Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome. We're excited that you're joining us today to chat a little bit about financing teaching English abroad, from your TEFL certification course to getting over to that classroom abroad or even online. We are joined today by our friends and partners at Go Abroad. And if you're not familiar, Go Abroad is your go-to resource for finding meaningful travel programs, comparing options, reviewing programs, and lots of great articles and resources. Megan Lee from Go Abroad is joining us. Megan, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. I work with goabroad.com, and as Ashley mentioned, we're the go-to place for you to find all the information you could want when it comes to choosing a program. So if you are thinking about teaching abroad and you're thinking, should I get my TEFL certificate with ITA? What were past experiences like? What can I find out about the entire experience? We're the person you can go to find third-person reviews, some advice for choosing programs, what to look for in high-quality programs, everything you could possibly want. And then we also have a lot of other really cool things like a fundraising tool that we'll talk about later, which is great for helping you finance your life abroad, and a scholarship directory and all sorts of good stuff. So definitely check us out sometime.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan, and thanks for joining us today all the way from the Bay Area. We also have two incredible International TEFL Academy alumni ambassadors joining us. First, we have Laura Nayland, one of our ambassadors who started off teaching English in South Korea and is now teaching English in Vietnam. She has spent 5 years abroad. And we also have Ryan Cook. Ryan has been abroad for about 11 months. He teaches English online and lives in Prague. Welcome to the both of you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you were doing before you went abroad, your degree, etc.?
Sure. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I was living in Chicago for about 6.5 years prior to abroad. So I studied journalism, and I was actually working in that field. I was a content writer at a digital marketing agency in the West Loop in Chicago, and I just wanted to change. I was having like a quarter life crisis or something, and teaching abroad was an incredible opportunity to like work and get paid, save money. So I took it.
Fantastic. Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, in a small town called Harrisonville. After, I went to Greenville University, where I majored in education. After education, I was a teacher for 5 years. I taught special education. I also did some other side jobs such as driver's education, physical education. And after 5 years, I had an opportunity to make a life change and teach abroad. Back in 2006, I went abroad and experienced Europe for the first time, and told myself I'd always go back to Europe. And now I get to live a dream or live a goal that I've always wanted to do, and travel abroad and live in a country that I've always wanted to.
Yeah, Prague is quite the fairy tale city. I was lucky enough to visit last year during our International TEFL Academy company trip. So I can see the draw. It is like living in a little wonderland.
It really is. Everything is beautiful within the city, because the World War didn't affect the city overall. It still holds all of its beauty.
Super. Well, we're so lucky to have everybody joining us today. A lot of Midwesterners here, which is great. If you're just tuning in, you haven't missed much. We're talking about financing your teach abroad experience, from your TEFL course to getting to a classroom in front of students. We wanted to talk first a little bit about what Fund My Travel is. It's a crowdsourced fundraising tool. Megan, can you share a little bit about that?
Great. Yeah, so as Ashley mentioned, fundraising tools have really become the norm, especially when you're asking friends and family from the internet to donate money to a campaign that you've created. Usually it's for a cause that you're passionate about, or some expenses that you can't quite cover, but there wasn't the exact platform for you to invite people to support you in having a life-changing trip, or moving abroad to volunteer or to teach abroad, etc. And so we really felt like there was a gap in what was available to serve these individuals who want to travel. And so that's how Fund My Travel came to be. And so Fund My Travel is a place where you can easily log in, create a campaign, give us all the details of what you're trying to accomplish, what your goals are, what you're hoping to ultimately achieve, and then invite friends and family to support you and your broader network in accomplishing those goals.
Awesome. So how would somebody who is looking to teach English abroad raise funds using your tool for, their TEFL course, flight, startup costs? What would that look like?
It would be pretty easy. I mean, first of all, you're going to want to create a sort of an outlined budget of all of those startup costs that Ashley mentioned. So that ranges from footing the bill of your TEFL certificate course, because it will cost you up to a couple $100s, maybe more. Your flight, especially if you're teaching in a place that's far-flung, such as Vietnam, where Laura is, or even Prague, that's going to cut you back a couple $100 too. Then you got, your teach abroad gear. Maybe you need to set up a storage facility for all of your belongings, or you need to get your visa squared away. All those things can add up pretty quickly. And so it's really important that you're financially secure before you even start that process and before you even move abroad. Because let's face it, you're not going to get your first paycheck immediately as soon as you land. So you need to have a nest egg of money. And so what you can do is log on to fundmytravel.com. There's a button from the homepage that says create a fundraiser. And from there you can walk through. It's a pretty fun and intuitive process in order to, to upload photos, to give the details of your trip, and to even outline specific things that you wouldn't mind having donated to you either, such as maybe you need a new backpack, like a big sturdy one for life abroad, or maybe you need, maybe you would appreciate somebody donating miles to help you offset the cost of your flight. You can do all of that within the fundraising platform at fundmytravel.com.
Yeah, definitely puts the fun in fundraising, if you will. List format sounds awesome. Do you have any kind of tips, tricks, advice from somebody who is new to crowdsource fundraising and using that kind of platform?
I think the dog.
Sorry.
The dog too. There are some places where you can do that. So tips and advice in order to have a successful campaign. I think the most important thing that you can do as a teacher or as somebody who dreams of becoming an international teacher is to really sit down and think about what your goals are and what you want to accomplish, and making sure you add a little bit of meat to that. Like, yes, you're going to go teach abroad, you're going to teach small children or adult learners, or et cetera, but how does that play into the bigger picture of what your life's goals are? What are you hoping to learn? What lessons are you hoping to unpack from this experience abroad? Because people really want to support and they want to get involved with things that are bigger than just the what. They want to know, how does this connect to your values, or how does this align with your entire goals, the bigger picture. So sitting down and reflecting on what those look like for yourself, and that can be a lot of different things, is really essential, because then you can use that information to infuse your campaign with much more detail and specifics than just like, hey, I want to teach abroad in Korea, can you give me money for it? Like, that doesn't excite me as a potential donor. I want to feel like I'm joining you, I'm supporting, I'm becoming a part of something. And so really thinking through those goals and allowing those details to be present in your description is, I think, essential for inviting a lot of passionate people to support you.
Yeah, getting that core why behind there definitely will set you apart from other fundraisers. I remember my first time crowdsource fundraising. It was nerve-wracking. I was like, I have money saved, but I really need some support to do what I'm hoping to do. And really showcasing what this was going to add to my life, and how, my gosh, skipping a $5 coffee this week and even putting $5 toward, my flight or, my course can help me make this a possibility that wasn't before. So I definitely agree with that, Meg.
Totally. What was your experience like crowdfunding, Ashley? Was it a successful, awesome experience?
It was a lot more successful than I anticipated. I was nervous, reaching out to friends and family for money. But I really laid out the broken down costs of everything I needed and why this was so important to me. And I think the greatest success I found was social media. So posting on all of my social media channels consistently, as soon as anybody would donate, even if it was $5 or $10, tagging them and saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Megan Lee, for, skipping your lunch at this fancy restaurant this week or whatever, and donating to help me get abroad. And other people would see that. And I had people donate I hadn't talked to maybe in 10 years, old colleagues, old professors, things like that I was connected to on social media. So you never really know who might be out there and willing to support you if you really explain why you're doing it.
Totally. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Are there any massive success stories from Fund My Travel that you can share with us, or any big campaigns that somebody's really done well?
Oh, yeah. More often than not, the people who are creating campaigns and who are committed to seeing them through, because honestly, it's not just a matter of making a beautiful campaign and letting it exist in the internet and hoping people by the kindness of their hearts find it and donate massive amounts of money to it. As you said, you had to market it on social media. You had to, be a little vulnerable and ask for help and really try to reach out to those connections that you have. And so if you are willing to make the campaign and do the work to get the word out about that campaign, you're bound to see massive success. We have so many campaigners who had a goal of, raising $1,000, and suddenly they're at a 200% success rate, raising $2,000 or more. And so really those people who know their why, who can communicate what the value of this experience is to them, and who actually follow through with telling their friends and family about the donation opportunity, are the ones who see a lot of great money rolling in.
Yeah, I had a very small goal set, maybe $200 or $300, and I hit over 2,000. I was shocked that many people would be so invested in what I was doing, and then they truly are. They're in on this experience with you, and then when you do get abroad and they're seeing this, they're kind of living through the experience with you, and who knows, they might even come visit you. So it's kind of a fun start to finish a circle there.
Very cool. Love it.
Well, let's loop in some of these ITA alumni ambassadors here. Let's start maybe with Laura. Tell us a little bit about your TEFL course. Did you take an online course, an in-person course? What was that like?
Sure. I took the in-person course in Chicago, and I loved it. I felt like I learned a lot, and I was able to apply a lot of the skills, in the future when I was actually teaching. What I liked a lot about it was I had to do the practicum. So that was really terrifying for me, teaching adults. But I was volunteering. It helped me with volunteering. I was with the Heartland Alliance in Chicago. And I did ESL tutoring for refugees, which was really cool. From Myanmar, Somalia, and Afghanistan, actually. So it was a really cool prep before South Korea. Although I taught little children in South Korea, kindergarten and preschool, so it was quite a difference, but great experience all around. I met some wonderful people in the program. I ended up meeting up with a few of them in Korea, which was cool to see them, cool to see somebody else in a different country that them from somewhere else, like America, or to see somebody from Vietnam in America. It's pretty wild as well.
Yeah, those reconnections. How did you go about financing the ITA Chicago course here? It's not, something you probably had overnight, a couple $1,000s. What did you do for that?
I am not going to lie. I actually had some savings,
okay.
But that is pretty rare. Yeah, I'm very fortunate in that case, but it's not cheap, but yeah, I did have some savings for a rainy day, and that was my rainy day. So awesome. I just sort of went with it. Yeah.
Ryan, what about you? Which course did you take, and how'd you go about financing it?
Yeah, I actually did the online course. It's my lifestyle was very busy. Actually, I was kind of saving money as I was getting ready to go abroad. So it was important to me that I continue to work and to also be able to take the classes at the same time. So I ended up taking this course in May, finished it in August, and was able to head out here to Prague. And the way I financed that is I actually kind of the same thing as Laura, is that I had some savings. I was fortunate enough to have a little deposit, and it's I knew it was important for me to invest in my future, so I was able to pull out of it and invest in the TEFL course.
Yeah, when we think about, the finances involved in a bachelor's degree in the undergraduate education, and you compare it to, TEFL certification course, yeah, $1,000, $2,000, that's a lifetime investment in your education and opens up access to jobs all over the world. So certainly we'll never depreciate.
Definitely not, and I haven't regretted my experience yet.
Yeah, likewise.
For either of you, did money play any kind of role in deciding where you wanted to teach location-wise and the kind of salaries and benefits offered in different countries?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, definitely for me. I wanted to be somewhere in Central Europe, but it's easy to get stuck in Germany or Italy or some of the big European countries were expensive. I was fortunate enough to pick a country that is very inexpensive and easy to move around in.
Yeah, I actually, when I signed up with ITA, I had no intention of moving to Asia at all. But I spoke with the advisor that I spoke with at the time, Cassie. She sort of convinced me, not with any pressure. She just was very open about how much money she saved, and was really easy to talk to. And so throughout the course, I was slowly warming up to the idea of South Korea, and I'm glad I did. It was completely life-changing. I could save quite a bit of money, so. Yeah.
I think it is always surprising as an advisor talking with students every day. Someone might start out with the idea of going to Costa Rica or Spain, and then they realize, oh my gosh, there is so much potential for savings and benefits in places in Asia where I can really start chipping away at my student loans. My housing could be paid for. My airfare can be reimbursed. It sort of shifts the conversation for maybe a year of teaching until they get to that original place and maybe have some of those student loans.
Right, absolutely. So yeah, it was definitely not expected, but I'm so glad I did, because you always hear about these people who save this large chunk of cash in Asia, and I never thought that I would be that person, but here I am. So.
Wow. So when you left South Korea to teach in Vietnam, were you conscious of the financial realities of that, or how did moving from a place that's very well known for its lucrative opportunities for ESL teachers, how did that change your path, or did it?
I actually have a bit of a crazy route how I got to Vietnam. So I lived after South Korea, I backpacked Southeast Asia, and then ended up in New Zealand for 9 months. And then from New Zealand, I backpacked Europe for a few months, and then Vietnam. So by the time I got to Vietnam, I had put a pretty hefty dent into my savings that I had from Korea. But as far as the startup costs in Vietnam, it wasn't too much of an impact. And I've actually found I'm spending a little bit more in Vietnam than I was in South Korea, which is kind of crazy.
Interesting. For travel around Vietnam or regionally, or just for living costs?
Living costs, because in South Korea, I did not have to pay rent, whereas in Vietnam, I do. Little things like transportation adds up, and the food is really cheap, but then I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I get really sick of Vietnamese food, so I want Western food, and it adds up over time, so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whereas in Korea, I always ate local for the most part. So.
Looking back at both of your, Ryan, when you moved over to Prague, and Laura on your way to Korea, do you remember how much you were ballpark budgeting for your startup costs to your life abroad?
How about Ryan, you go first, because I've been talking about.
Yeah, I was anticipating somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 as a startup, and actually coming out of it, I think I ended up around 1,700 of my overall expenditures. So I actually, I plan to spend more than what I anticipated, just to anticipate problems. But everything worked out very smoothly in the transition to coming to Prague, finding a flat, getting my insurance, getting my visa, and I ended up spending less than I anticipated. So I feel like my situation, I was very fortunate. I was able to start my job quickly, so I wasn't taking a hit to my budget too much. So I was very fortunate in that manner.
Yeah, I'm the same. I didn't have to really pay for much as far as my apartment goes. Everything was there. The girl who I replaced literally left me like full bottles of shampoo, and so I was really lucky. But I think I anticipated around similar, about $2,000. I think I spent just like almost that much. Not within the first month, but like a month and a half, I would say. I almost spent about $2,000. I had to wait a month and a half to get paid.
Right. What would you say was like an unexpected expense that you had after you moved abroad that you didn't prepare for?
I cut my finger. I had to get 9 stitches in the training section. It was wonderful. I mean, it wasn't a large amount of money, but just, I mean, that sucked. Little things like clothes, I don't know, just little things would add up, I would say. There was nothing that was like major for me personally. But.
I think for me, even though I had an easy process getting my visa, it was a little hit here and there of, you have to pay for this document, you have to pay for that document, you have to go to one side of the city to the other. So those are the things that I had a consultant that helped me with it, but I was anticipating one full sum and I ended up having small expenditures along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
So you had a consultant for like moving abroad?
I had hired a consultant to help me with my visa process.
Oh, okay.
So it was just somebody that can point me in the right direction, sign the right paperwork, and help me get my visa faster.
So you guys have fairly similar budgets for startup costs, which is interesting, you know, based on how the process works for interviewing and get started. And your savings covered your TEFL course. Did you ask your parents or friends for financial support? Did you have to take on any kind of part-time jobs to save for that, you know, flight and startup cost component of the experience?
Laura, you go first.
Okay. I did not have to pay for my flight to Korea, so that wasn't necessarily a big issue, which is great because it's a lot of money. I did ask my father for a little bit of support for my visa process, because in order to move to Korea, you have to have your visa already taken care of in the States or whatever country you're living in or from. And it's kind of expensive. I didn't realize, you know, it's like $18 here, $55 here, you know, passports, however much money that costs. So I think it was like $10 to $15. It's the little things that add up to get that. And then I was overnighting a lot of the paperwork, and that this was quite expensive and unexpected. So I guess to touch on like the last question, I didn't really have any unexpected hits when I got to Korea. It was mainly prior to. It was a little bit more expensive than that. But yeah, my dad he helped me a little bit with that process, which was nice.
It's nice to have support.
Yeah.
And don't forget, folks tuning in, you can be asking questions in the chat. We're talking all about financing teaching English abroad, from your TEFL course to getting over there. Laura, Ryan, Meg, myself, we're all happy to answer questions, so don't be shy. Ryan, how long did it take you to save up for that, you know, couple $1,000s in startup costs to help you get settled into your time in Prague?
Yeah, so one thing, like I said at the start of this discussion, is I was a teacher for 5 years, so my summer was available. So to help make for sure I was stable when I came here, is I picked up a side job. I did some maintenance work. I did some lessons of through some swimming. So I had my summer open to one, take my online TEFL course, two, to save up money to at least give me a good base to start my life in a different country.
That's awesome. How long would you say like passed between the idea of teaching abroad, the like actual process of trying to find a program, deciding to do the program, and then paying for the program and saving up to go abroad? Like, what was that window of time like for each of you?
Mine, I think, was, I would say from the start of when I was thinking about it to actually officially starting the program, I think mine took about 7 months. I mean, it's always been in the back of my head to try this experience, but when I got to a point in my life where I could actually make this happen, I started to consider all the different programs that I could take. And so I would say the overall process of picking the program, finding the resources to help pay for it, and then actually starting. I started in May because the end of the school year was in May. So it was just more beneficial for me to start planning, save money, and then start paying the cost for the course and getting ready to think about where I wanted to go abroad. Now, for Czech Republic, I knew I wanted to go here a year prior because I went here on vacation, fell in love with the city, so I knew where I wanted to go. I just needed to figure out when I was going to make that happen.
I would say about 6 months for me as well. Because I was living in Chicago, it was a little bit easier for me to just go into the office and talk with people and then start the course. I mean, I started it quite quickly after. I had always been thinking about teaching abroad, but I decided, I was just like, I'm going to do it. And so I took the course I started in June, and then I was out of the country by December. So it was quite a whirlwind, but yeah, I was ready.
Laura, we have a question coming in for you here. I know you mentioned that, maybe the 4 weeks of startup costs we recommended didn't quite cover you to that first paycheck because it was about a month and a half in. So we have someone asking, how much money did you realistically need to go to Korea with? Your flight was paid, but what do you think you would recommend for someone headed over to budget for?
Sure. I would say like $2,000 to $3,000 would be the safe, because you'd still have that extra grand of comfort. And unlike me, I don't think most people have to wait a month and a half to get paid. So
a little emergency fund in case.
Yeah, I would just have some cushioning in case anything happens, or, you have to buy things, because sometimes people don't have bedding and things like that. And bedding is quite expensive in South Korea. So I will say, if you do get a job, I would definitely ask either the teacher that you're replacing, or your manager about the housing situation, what will be provided and everything, because that can be pretty expensive if it's not already set for you.
Yeah, so even though the flight and housing are covered, maybe some of those little pieces and details that we don't think about that add up when you have to spend it.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Keep the questions coming, folks. All right. Oh, Megan.
When you say that you would recommend $2,000 to $3,000 as your startup cost, is that assuming that you won't need? Is that outside of like an emergency funds separate nest egg that you have in case, like, let's say you suddenly need to go home, or, maybe a medical emergency or things like that? Like, do you have any advice for anyone watching who like might be concerned about potential exorbitant expenses, and how do you plan for that?
Sure. Me or Ryan?
Yeah, Ryan, you wanna?
I mean, I guess for me, I was just planning for a worst case scenario. If I got sick, I'm in another country, I'm unfamiliar, I wanted to make for sure I had the expenditures available to address any needs that popped up really quick. So I made it a smooth transition instead of stressing about not having the funds to pay for this or pay for that. But overall, I think I was just anticipating, hoping, or how would you say, I was anticipating for anything bad to happen, but was always hoping for the best.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that, definitely. I think, you know, you can bring over however much money you have, and it's not going to hurt. It'll just, you know, it's always great to have a little bit extra money. But yeah, I never even was thinking about worst case scenario sometimes, because to me, I was like, I'm just going to teach. Nothing's going to happen. And nothing besides this tiny injury really did happen. So, and that wasn't a major setback anyway. But there's definitely, I mean, there's the culture shock aspect that people should, you know, be aware of. You know, sometimes people go somewhere and they can't deal. So a flight back home would be necessary, because especially in Korea, they wouldn't pay for that. So something to consider.
So speaking of your little injury, were you covered with health insurance from your school in Korea? Is that included for you?
It was 50-50. So they paid for half, yeah, 50-50 works. So I paid, I think it was like $100. So it wasn't much at all, especially compared to States. As we all know, it's pretty expensive here, especially if you're not fully insured. So yeah, it wasn't bad. It was just painful. But I was cutting a frozen banana like it was my fault.
The typical millennial cutting out an avocado issue.
Yeah. I was impatient. I wanted a smoothie and didn't peel my banana ahead of time. Sorry, bananas. You're going to freeze them.
Ryan, what about you, health insurance wise? Did you find a provider to cover you on your own? Was it included in part of your role?
Actually, like I said before, I had a visa consultant that helped me through the process, and part of that process of getting my visa is to make for sure that I had health insurance, and it's required by law to have health insurance. They have universal health insurance here at a low cost, but in order for me to live here, to get paperwork that was necessary to get my visa, insurance was one of the requirements. And my consultant helped me out with which ones that I should go to. I had different options to pick from, and she always suggested the best option and the second best option and how to go about it. So overall, I'm happy with my health insurance. I know, like Laura said, in the States, it's a little more difficult and more expensive. Experiencing health insurance here has been very eye-opening, coming from America, and I see how it's benefited me overall financially, because I'm not paying so much out of pocket. I have a set amount that I pay per month, and I'm able to budget for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was always shocked when traveling to see how much better the medical care was and costs abroad. Now I understand medical tourism and going down to Mexico to get your teeth cleaned, or, I mean, I was in the hospital in Thailand for several days and I don't remember paying anything out of pocket. So it's pretty amazing what you can find abroad.
It is. My roommate, who had an injury, was able to go to different places, and he was in and out, had appropriate service, and not the kind of the hassle that we experience in the States.
Nice.
Well, if you're not, if you're not, you know, needing to plan for potential medical emergencies or build up your savings, et cetera, like, after you start receiving a regular paycheck while abroad, how did you approach like managing your international expenses, maybe paying off some debt back home or building your savings account? Yeah, how much did you save? What did you use for travel? Things like that.
I guess for me, one of the big things I was looking forward to, you know, of course, teaching, but I was also excited about traveling, as we all are. And so for me, or at least my goal is as I'm teaching in Europe or wherever I'm at, is to at least experience the culture and travel often. So I start with my budget based off of how much I'm going to be traveling from either month to month or every other month. And then I will consider other expenditures that I might incur, whether it's food, transportation, and other such resources.
Where's your favorite place you've been so far?
That's a tough question. I've been to 5 different countries and 12 different cities in 11 months. Out of all of them, I think Scotland was my favorite. I went last month to Scotland for my birthday. Went to the Highlands. I went and saw Loch Ness, which was amazing as a child. When I was a boy, that was like my fantasy of going to Loch Ness and watching the monster jump out of the water, or whatever fantasy we created when we were young. And it was an amazing experience. The scenery was nothing. It's one of the most beautiful sceneries you'll ever see.
Did you see any Highland cows?
Oh yeah, they're the hairy cows. They're called hairy coos.
It's so cute. Coons?
Hairy
Yeah.
coos.
It's
so nice that Prague is so centralized in Europe. You're able to travel and see so much of Europe while you're there. Man, it's on the top of my list too.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything is in, whether $100 or less in travel, if you take a car or if you fly by plane, or $20 or less to take a bus. So I can get anywhere and pretty quickly for a good price.
So awesome.
very cool. And you, Ashley, how do you manage your income now that you're abroad?
So I basically, when I was in Korea, I used an app called Expense, and I sort of made it a game. I wanted to see how little I could spend each month. Once I sort of got comfortable, because the first few months I was going out a lot, meeting people, and sort of had this core group of friends. We all did stuff. I'm so sorry. And so once I started getting settled and like organizing everything, I managed to save a little over $25,000 in 2 years. Amazing. And in that time, I still traveled extensively throughout Korea. I mean, almost every other weekend, I was on a train going to a new town. Yeah, I took myself to Hong Kong for my 26th birthday. That was cool. I went to China for the Chinese New Year, Japan to see the cherry blossoms, and Vietnam. That was my first time in Vietnam in 2014, and I was like, I want to live here someday. And now I'm living there. But I used my bonus. I traveled Southeast Asia for 5 months. So in Korea, you get a bonus at the end of your contract. So you get a paycheck, you get a final paycheck, and then the equivalent of that paycheck as a bonus. So I had about $5,000, a little over $5,000 as just like travel money. So I spent that on my backpacking trip. And cool.
I think jaws are dropping out there. People are like, whoa, I can save $25,000 teaching South Korea for 2 years. I have this $5,000 of fun money. Where do I start?
Yeah, it's totally possible. And I'm able to save still now in Vietnam roughly about $1,000 a month. So I'm still sending money home. I'm spending a lot of it. I'm currently in America visiting my family, and money goes quickly here. So I'm looking to get back working and like sending money home immediately. But yeah.
Yeah, Ryan, what about teaching online? Are you using that to supplement and pay for travel, or what kind of expenses are involved in getting started with that? And then also, can you save from teaching online?
Actually, I found it to be one of the better options. I'm sure some other people might argue against it, but actually online teaching is my main source of income. So I teach about 12 to 13 classes a day, which is around 6 to 7 hours. And I also get paid in US dollar. And the US dollar exchanged from the Czech Republic, it's the crown, is very good, or it's decent. It's been better since the crisis. But because the dollars exchange very well, I use that as my main income. And then I use my private lessons as my side income, kind of my fun money, my spending cash, and an opportunity for me to get out of the house and meet people, because it can be a grind to stay inside all day without having access to people to talk to outside of your students. And I think we all know as teachers or even individuals that talking to adults and having the same ability to engage at the same level is important in being a teacher or even being an individual. But again, it's been beneficial for me. I've been able, I would say I could save about $1,000 every month. I could even save up to 1,500, but because I travel often, I put all that money towards my travel expenses. So I could come out if I wasn't traveling as much as I could as I do, around 1,500 each month.
Wow. So what is your hourly pay rate for teaching online? And did you have to invest in any kind of props or anything to get started?
Yeah, I'm at based on, they have some criterias on how the pay system works and some things you have to achieve in order to jump up pay brackets. But I get paid around $19 an hour, $19 an hour, and then from there I'm able to basically, it's based off a month. I work as many classes as I want. I set my own schedule, and then once a month I get paid into my account.
Cool.
And what was your other question?
Oh, did you have to invest in any kind of props or things to prepare for teaching online? And who are you teaching? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. My biggest expense was my computer because I am online teaching to kids in China. I needed to make sure I had a quality computer that had good streaming, a lot of memory, because I also do videography for TEFL, and I needed the space and the software to use. So my biggest investment was my computer, but then I also had the small investments like my background for the students to see. I have marker boards, I have flashcards, so things that we would see in the classroom, I bring into my online classroom. And so I bought some things in the States before I came to Prague, and overall, it wasn't too expensive. I knew what I needed, and I would say over time, I maybe have bought things here and there in the Czech Republic, but I had mostly everything when I got here.
Nice. Do you have tips and advice for anybody who's either maybe looking to only teach English online or use it as a part-time supplement to their, full-time role teaching abroad?
Well, I think it always depends on where you live. I think if you're in the Czech Republic or even in Europe, it's good to do online teaching. But if you are considering which country, you're going to, yes, get US dollars in whatever country you are in, but it's your dollar is not going to go as far as in Germany. Your dollar is not going to go as far in Italy or Spain. So those are going to be the things that you want to consider when doing online teaching. It's a great source of money, income of money, but based off the exchange rate, how that's going to affect you in the long run.
So looking at the different online teaching companies, what currency they pay in, as it can differ from company to company. Yeah, really good advice.
Yeah.
Laura, did you do any kind of teaching online?
I'm actually going to be starting some online teaching when I get back to Vietnam. Just to save up some extra money, to keep myself busy.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed is there are many teachers in Prague, at least, that I've met that do language schools, but they also do, for side money, VIP Kid or some kind of online program, and they use that that side money to play with. That's their play money. So I use mine as a main resource of income. I know people that use it as, just some fun money to play with.
Yeah, that's my plan. So we'll see.
Yeah, so once you get that TEFL credential, you get the money and startup costs you need to get abroad, there are so many different avenues and routes that you can take above and beyond just, your set job and what it provides, whether it's teaching online or private tutoring. So it's great to see that you guys are tapping into all those different arenas.
Definitely.
Does anybody have any last minute tips or advice for future students? How to use Fund My Travel most effectively? Any tips on what was challenging getting started abroad financially, things like that?
I think for me, I would say when you get to your country, you're going to hit the ground running, and to not be as stressed out. Yes, it's a process, but try to enjoy the experience. It's going to be a lot to take in, a culture shock, trying to get adjusted, finding a house, finding a job, figuring out how you're going to live a life in a different country. So I think try to enjoy the experience as much as possible, because it will hit you, you'll hit the ground running once you get there. But overall, I think the experience was worth it. You learn a lot about how life works outside the United States. You learn about how to engage with other people, and I think you learn and grow pretty quickly once you get to the country that you go to.
For sure. Yeah, to piggyback what Ryan is saying, I'd say just keep an open mind. Understand that there is going to be some challenges. It's sort of like this, living in a different country. Sometimes it's really great, and then you're going to have a bad day, but just sort of ride the wave. Don't fight it. Open yourself to the culture. Just, really open your mind is my main advice, because it's a really beautiful thing once you sort of see how other people are living, and it'll change you. It'll change the way you think and the way that you see the world and interact with people. So, yeah, it's exciting.
I love that. It's not all rainbows and butterflies, but that's what makes it this absolutely life-changing adventure, is that you're out of your comfort zone. You're doing things that feel a bit weird. You're meeting all sorts of people, and you're probably going to have some obstacles, some roadblocks, some critical thinking to do, and you come out on the other side totally changed.
For sure, yeah.
And it's an incredible feeling. I know Meg can relate to that as well.
For sure. I want to retweet all of you.
Well, we are super happy. So many people were able to tune in on our channel here at International TEFL Academy and over at Go Abroad. We have another ITA alumni ambassador actually taking over the Go Abroad Instagram story next Friday, July 6th from Madrid, Spain. So make sure you tune in. Christina Bates is amazing. You'll love seeing her life in Madrid, and she answers questions. So you can always message her during her takeover on there as well.
That's going to be fun. Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
Good to see you guys today, and thanks for tuning in. Any other questions about financing, teaching English abroad, feel free to reach out to us, and we're always happy to answer questions.
Cool. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Bye from Chicago.
Bye from Ohio.
Ciao from Prague.